There we go. Hello, Richard. Welcome back to another fantastic episode of A History of the Interstellar Objects. And we're going to go with episode 2.3 tonight. Hello, Gio. And yeah, Richard, if you want to do a wee recap of the last couple of minutes or the last wee bit of last week's episode, and then we'll just jump straight into it.
Right. Peace and respect to you all. Well, here we are at 2.3. So last time we were at some of the repercussions of the lighting of Jupiter and what will be seen from, if I stutter, it's because I can hear my own voice, so I apologize. What can be seen from the Earth by the naked eye. So that's what we'll be starting at.
Yeah, well, go on ahead then, man. Yeah, just
okay.
You're in charge, and I'm just here to question you. So,
right.
Yeah.
Okay, so we were at the impact of. I'm not going to be able to do this. I'm going to have to take my earbuds out and hold the mic close to my face to do this. So you'll forgive me.
Whatever you need to do, man. I understand you're dealing with a wee bit of an echo as well. So if I was in that situation, it would drive my head away. I thank you for your patience for at least being here tonight.
It's my fault more than anyone's.
We'll get it sorted.
So we were at the impact of Mercury onto the moons Europa and Io, the ignition of Jupiter. That ignition causing chunks of the moons Io and chunks of the moons Io and Europa, and also chunks of the planet Mercury being knocked out into the asteroid belts and them colliding with each other, and some of that heading toward the inner solar system, including a chunk of the moon Io.
And that was a representation of the armies.
The echo and just try to ignore it. Oh boy. Okay.
And that was a representation of the two armies from the Bible, the Palestinians, or not the Palestinians, the Palestines, and the two armies separating, yes?
The lines read something like this. And as soon as David cut off the head of the giant, the army of Philistine ran away, and the army of Israel chases.
Exactly, yes, that's what I mean. Sorry, I got the country wrong.
Something like that.
Yes, well, they're a representation of that. So there is some of them then heading into the inner solar system, and one of them I do believe is heading towards Earth then.
A chunk of the moon Io is supposed to, according to the story. We're not supposed to get any major impacts from the asteroids.
Just from the moon itself.
Yeah. So after we saw the lighting of Jupiter, then would come Wormwood, which is a chunk of the moon Io, apparently landing in a large pond or small lake, some kind of trapped water system, and then the chemical reaction with sulfur burning in a body of water. So some of it has to be exposed to air. Of course, we're talking about a time frame when there's no electricity. There's no way for people to communicate other than by word of mouth, except for possibly some hardened government equipment that might be able to communicate with each other. But your average citizen wouldn't be able to. They just hear things via rumor, via people they had talked to.
Well, how long do you think it would take for the chunk of Io to get to Earth? I think we were working off a time frame of 3 to 6 months or something for Mercury to get to Jupiter.
From where I can put it in the story, it would be from the lighting of Jupiter, probably 3 to 6 months, maybe as much as 8 months. It's hard to say.
So between this time, just for talk's sake, we're taking 6 months for Mercury to get to Jupiter and another 6 months for Io to get to, this would be a full guts of a year. Again, we're approximating, but approximately a year after Mercury had left its orbit that
That's
Io
right.
is going to hit Earth.
Could be more. I'm not really certain.
Yeah. But I'm just
text
talking,
doesn't go into great detail
again, as I go back to, man, I'm just thinking in solar system, if a year has gone past, then the Earth has done one full rotation, of
Sure.
the sun. I'm just thinking of it in solar system terms.
Yeah, the timing on this is just amazing. If this is all calculated out and predicted, I don't think we have a supercomputer that could do that.
Give it time. I think I read somewhere that a new quantum computer has been actually working regularly. I know they got one to work before, but I think this one is working regularly now, and it's something like 10,000 times faster than the standard supercomputer has now. Like.
Wow.
So maybe,
I wonder what kind of stuff God has. I'm sure the supercomputers in heaven are quite advanced.
Well, if you think about it, well, obviously we're limited in our imagination because we can only imagine what's so far. But once you get into quantum computing, I don't think, once you get into quantum entanglement and things like that, obviously their computers will be smaller. Our quantum computer is probably the size of my living room at the minute, or the device to run it is the size of my living room, as it was back in the day for other computers. Even in our generation time, biggest we could have is a 3.5-inch floppy, held a couple of megabytes, and now you've got a pen drive that holds terabytes. Technology does get smaller, so I assume that quantum computing, well, I say is going to be the limit, but then we could be wrong at that. From our scientific knowledge, we're limited at the minute, but they could have something, just a quantum computer but smaller.
I wonder how far it goes. I really do.
Well, you've looked into the size of an atom, quarks and tangents. Yeah, quarks and tangents. You've looked. You know that there's quarks and mesons and all that. They're smaller. You've looked into what makes an atom.
I have.
Yes.
A little bit.
Sorry, go on ahead.
Yeah, I think there's something called a muon.
A muon, and yeah, there's mesons and quarks and loads of other stuff.
Last time I checked, there were 6 different things. I don't know.
I think we're up to about 9 or 12 now, and then you have the negative or the opposite ones as well. Yeah, it's pretty cool, man. And maybe there's a wee picture they've done, like a frame, something like the periodic table, something similar to that. So I'm tangenting. I'm doing my thing. Go on ahead.
Well, I think you're pretty good for that. Okay, so where are we?
Io is on its way towards Earth.
Yes. Okay, so saying Io already impacted the Earth. You'll forgive me, this echo is killer.
No, I can totally understand, man. I can see it in your face that it's annoying you.
It's hard, but it's not hurting me emotionally. It's just kind of hard to compensate for.
If there's only 2 people watching, man. If you want, we can jump out for 15 minutes and try and sort it, and then come back again. Like it can't be that hard to sort. Like.
Well, that depends on who you are. If you're me, it can be quite difficult. I've been trying for days to find this problem.
Well, at least, if anyone, thanks for turning up. If Richard is willing to struggle through, we will continue. And
it'd be better to struggle through.
Go on ahead, then, Richard.
So after Wormwood comes the smiting of the thirds. In the smiting of the thirds, the Earth is at a 66 degree angle to 2 light sources. Those would be the sun and Jupiter. Jupiter realized as a star. So that we have sunlight around parts of the Earth that we're not used to having. That is, it would affect the dawn and the dusk. And a third of the stars, that is by our appearance, not the stars themselves. And also it would smite the moon. So this is commonly called in Christianity the smiting of the thirds. But if we just were in a binary solar system and at a 66 degree angle, that's pretty easy to explain.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow, I have to talk really slowly. It's getting kind of funny. Okay. So then if you had, say, a half moon, and the moon were in such a phase, and opposite of that were Jupiter, you could have two lit sides of the moon that were dome in shape. And then, of course, in between that would be a dark line. Of course, we can't really see a dark line, whether that's during daylight or night hours, doesn't much matter. So it would make the appearance that the moon were split in half. And that's why that's in Islam,
Right.
that Muhammad splits the moon in half. We all know the moon has not been split in half in the past, but it would have the appearance of that in that time frame with those aspects
With the
in our
sunlight,
solar
yeah,
system.
with the two different sun periods, and then it would create a shadow in the middle. It would appear that there was a space or a gap and that it was split in half, appearance wise,
Right,
but not actually physically split in half.
right. Well, I don't think there's a lot of these expressions that have to be taken in context, and some are figurative, some are literal. And I think the best proof that I have that the understanding that I have is applicable is that it works throughout the text. It works contextually, consistently. So it at least is coherent within itself. Even if this never happened, it at least appears coherent.
Yes, I get what you mean. The story makes sense in the context that you're placing the story in.
Which is the only context I've ever heard of that works for that. I've heard of a lot of different dogmatic views within Christianity, but none of them actually work for all of it.
Oh, of course, yeah, there's always a loophole or a gap. Or
Right.
if I'm talking too fast, do shout at me. I watched one of my videos back the other night, and I do have a tendency to talk very fast. So I'll try and slow down as well. You're doing really well if the echo's bad. I have seen people with headphones listening back to themselves and trying to sing, and it's impossible. They can't do it. So you're doing very well. I appreciate it.
I appreciate it. I mean, I think this is important. If this is true, this is really life changing stuff. If a person can accept it, and especially if it's going to happen within our natural lifetimes. Well, the way I look at this is if I'm telling a weird story, I'm not hurting anyone. However, if what I understand to be true is true, then this helps people immeasurably.
Yeah, well, I'll be desperately honest with you. This I find it interesting. You know, your point of view. I do find it interesting to hear different stories and different points of view. And for anything, it's just nice to have the conversation and talk to you and listen to your, we'll just call it different point of view.
You've been more kind than you ever had to be, and I really appreciate it.
Well, forget about that. We'll
I
talk
know you
more
don't
about
like
you.
compliments, but
We'll
it
talk
happens to
more
be
about
true.
you. We'll talk more about you.
Yeah.
Just as a side note, somebody was in the chat on Tuesday, and I named the stream with Jim Majors, a bushy beard meets a beautiful mustache. And somebody mentioned in the chat, Jim Majors and Robbie, where's Richard? I seen beautiful mustache and big bushy beard. Where's Richard? But sorry.
Okay, that's fine. So moving on with the story. Let's see. After the smiting of the thirds, the Earth would continue to rotate around the sun until it's directly in between two light sources. So, like the moon could have been in between and have two lit sides with a very small area poorly lit or unlit, the Earth would be eventually in that situation.
Okay.
Technically, on a globe, if there's two light sources and the globe is directly in between the two, there would be what makes for an old Baptist song. Would you happen to know the words, the lyrics to the song "I Saw the Light"?
I have heard the song, and as it's sung, the words may come back to me, but on the spot, I couldn't know.
Okay, so it comes from the text. It's popular in Baptist Christianity, but they did extrapolate out a little bit, so the lyrics aren't perfect, but they're close enough to understand that they are saying what I'm saying. that would be like this. I saw the light. I saw the light. No more darkness, no more night. Fill the world with God's holy light. Praise the Lord. I saw the light.
Okay.
So in the text, it says that God doesn't return until the earth is filled with his glory. That would mean there would be no more darkness, no more night. That's part of the text.
That's your
So,
interpretation, though, that, you know, the glory, that by that it says glory, it means light.
right. So Christians and other religions are going around trying to convert everyone to their religion to, quote unquote, bring them into the light. Unfortunately, that's not going to work if it's talking about the ignition of Jupiter. What they should do instead is send a nuclear missile into Jupiter and explode it into the core, and then it would happen.
Don't give Trump ideas. He's all up for starting wars. Don't give him any ideas.
I'm not sure they get approval on that one.
Well, space is technically like the ocean. There's,
How?
as in ownership rights, I mean. You know, I know that Antarctica has a what do you call them, a treaty, and it's technically not owned by anybody, but people have made agreements to work on it and share what they find and stuff. But space is like the ocean, as in nobody owns any time of the, you know, so you can have space pirates. What was that movie? I think that was in a movie. Somebody was in space, and it may have been Mars. I do believe it was Mars, because he says there's no rules in space. And because he was in space, he could be a space pirate then, same as the ocean.
Yeah, I suppose technically that's true.
I think they're bound to have been exploding nuclear bombs in space.
I think we have, yes.
Yeah, I would say we probably have. So yeah,
Okay.
sorry. Go on ahead, Richard.
It's just hard to concentrate with the echo.
Well, we'll only do a half
I
episode
apologize to
tonight.
everyone. I'm doing the best I can.
We'll do a wee half episode tonight, and we'll call the next one 0.35 or something, because it'll be grand. It'll be grand. We've got, everybody keeps coming back. We've got all our fans. They'll come back, you know. Jim and
Those
Mag,
who love us, love us. Those who don't,
fuck
don't.
off. Jim and Maga, thank you very much for turning up. We have a wee bit of a technical issue tonight. Richard has an echo, so please appreciate his slow speech. He's not drunk or anything. He's just dealing with an echo.
A real good one. Okay.
Go on ahead.
We'll get it fixed eventually. Okay, so after the smiting of the thirds, and then the glory of God, which makes, with the four announcing miracles, a total of 7 events. Why it's always 7, why 7 is a favorite number, I have no idea, but it seems the case.
7 and 17 are also my favorite unlucky numbers, as you know.
Oh, well, I didn't know they were unlucky numbers for you.
Well, I'm in a house number 7 now. I grew up in 17. My daughter was born on the 28th, which is 4 sevens in 2017. Now, obviously, you look for numbers, you find numbers, but 7 and 17 are very poignant, and predominantly have appeared in my life in around certain things. Like, I even have 14 steps. As I say, you can find certain numbers everywhere.
I have a bias for my old unit number from when I was in the military.
Yeah, everybody has their favorite numbers. So, go on ahead, Richard. Sorry.
Okay.
Number 7 is important.
So it makes a total of 7 events with the arrival of heaven. That would be, I think the text says something like the face of God, then the arrival of God, something like that. So you have the face of God, the glory of God, and the arrival of God. So that would make a total of 7.
Yes.
So the arrival of God would be heaven itself arriving to the earth. I know Christians have a big problem with me saying it that way. thinking that it's on some other plane of existence. You could never actually physically see it, and that's actually part of the problem, that these proofs will be able to be sensed with your natural senses, which is why so many change their minds when they see these things. Um, for instance, if this arrived to the Earth, people would point and say, alien invasion. But what's being described in the text is exactly that, a huge alien invasion by our ancestors. So that would make the seventh thing.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the completion of that story. Perhaps the only thing I didn't say was that, or didn't review, was that Mercury and Jupiter combined make a smaller sun, or David and Goliath make Jonathan, which is why David his soul is knit with Jonathan's soul. It's a permanent part. They're closer than close. They're within each other. That's something like that is in the text. So let's see. From here, we could talk about, and it would help me a lot if I could say like just small answers to like maybe questions that come to your mind, from a human aspect, from an agnostic or atheist aspect. Had they seen those things in that order, what do you think the natural reaction of the populace would be?
Well, to be honest, looking at it from my point of view, man, I think once we get to the gravity bit, I don't think that Earth will be where it'll be in a year. You know, if Mercury gets knocked out of its orbit, all that, but taking into consideration that all of this does happen, there's a hand of God, so to speak, steps in. Most of the populace, I would say, would probably go down the alien route, because people would expect God to appear as in a light in the clouds sort of thing. You know, not literally that, but you get what I mean.
Yeah.
And if 50 ships appeared in the sky and started, you know, either being nice or talking to people or doing anything, if 50 spaceships appeared in the sky, people are going to say aliens. They're not going to say God.
Right. I think that will be the case, which explains the line, Adam and Eve hid themselves from the face of God, or other lines that say things like, and people hid themselves in caves and caverns from the face of God, praying that the mountain fall on them, because who can stand? So I think the initial reaction you just described is probably relatively accurate.
Yeah, there'll be panic. There'll be, you know, all that stuff you see in the movies. People raiding Walmart and buying guns and bread and using the guns to buy bread. I'd say all that would probably happen.
I'm reading side chat. Would you read Jim Major's
Yes, of
aloud
course.
for everyone?
Question for Richard. What is the purpose of revealing something that would kill us before it came to its conclusion?
It would be useless. It's just not what's being described.
But
it's
you,
what
if I
Christians
may
could
say,
easily believe.
if
It's
I
a
may,
lot of what science might support. But like MathPig said, if God steps in and say, for instance, the Earth was going to be knocked off of its orbit and kill us, in probably less than a month, we'd be dead. Then God would have to intervene and make it work.
yes, without the, I hope again I don't be rude, but with all, as you would consider yourself a theist, as with all theistic, there is always a wee hand of God that comes in, there is a filler, so to speak, that would, because I personally don't think that I get paid on Monday. We're going to definitely get Universe Sandbox. If we're at the end of the story, that works out perfect, because next week we can actually input these things into the program and we can see. But I think if you give a time frame of a year, that is one full circle. And with Mercury being missing and having flown over the top of us, and all the rest of the stuff happening, I don't think that the earth would be there without, and I hate using this in a derogatory term because I don't mean it, but without the God of the gaps, without God stepping in and doing his hand of God magic thing or technology thing, shit would fucking freak out.
I think so. Mega Dirk 3 wrote, yes, Americans would totally stack up for a shootout with God, and I agree. And I think that's what the glowing lights around these objects actually is, what I would colloquially call a force field, would be the green glowing light around the throne of God, or the one who sits on God's throne. Jim, what I said was what you're saying is supported by science. What I'm saying, there's parts of that are not.
Its foundation is based in science, but the story itself does eventually and necessarily in its context need to go outside of science. But it does, I would agree, have a scientific background.
Not exactly what I meant. What I meant is I think our education is not complete, and some parts, small as they may be, of science are just incorrect.
Okay. No, that's fine. I'm not here to say you're wrong because I don't know. You know, I could be wrong in my interpretation of the entire world. We could all be brains in a jar. We don't know this. I think that's what we're all brains in Geo's. We are all imaginary things in Geo's brain in a jar. Who was it said that? I think somebody said that we're all dreams from Geo Sam's brain. Okay, right. Do the tagging in the chat for my name and throw out some questions for Richard. He's also watching, so you can feel free to tag Richard. I'm just going to mute myself so I can shout at the dog and tell him to lie down. Lie down! Come on, lie down here. Pot, get up.
First one to dislocate their hip loses. Actually, it's dislocate your hip and win. That would be the mark of winning.
I think the loser would dislocate their hip. No,
Not in the story.
Oh, it's quoting scripture. I didn't know that, but that's a bit stupid. If you got your hip, you're a loser. Hey Richard, why do you put up with Math Pig's smart mouth?
I love it.
Nerdy, I say math, you say... And then we look at the chat and wait for the answer. This is from the other night. And the chat's very slow. There's a 10-second, 15-second delay that we have to put up with.
That's a win, right, Jim Majors?
Richard,
okay.
Question from Tony. He spoke a while back of the brain. Sorry, Richard spoke a wee while back of parts of the brain that light up when one thinks of God. Can he expand on that, please? I think I've seen something on that myself, actually. But I don't think it's something to do with, in my opinion, God jumping in. It's something to do with how people would revere, would be a word, or put on a pedestal. And I'm sure if somebody had the same sort of feelings about a motorcycle or a hobby or even their loved one, a wife possibly, or a mother that had just passed away, I'm sure a correlation could be made between that. But Richard, the question was aimed at you, so go on ahead.
Well, certainly you're right, but what we were talking about there was not emotional signals, but processing signals. That if you ask a human being to think of themselves, a certain part of the brain will light up. If you ask them to think of God, the same part will line up. I believe this is because our spirit, some people call it soul, which is technically and textually incorrect.
Mm-hmm.
Should be saying spirit if you're a Christian, if you're referring to the part of you that God made that your mom and dad didn't make.
Yeah, okay.
So the word would be spirit. When we think of our spirit, the same part of the brain lights up, electrically active. So people see that and they say, oh, the way you think of God or your experience of God is actually experience of self. But I maintain that the reason that Satan hasn't come here with just advanced weaponry and wiped us out when we couldn't defend ourselves is because there was nothing to gain by doing that. That literally a person has to be convinced that there is no God, there can be no God, even presented with all of the conversation we've just had and been having on this series.
Well, I would be very just interested. Sorry, just to interrupt a wee bit. I would be very interested to see, and I probably wouldn't read it all because that's just me. But I would like to see if they did an alternative question, as in possibly asking a Christian, do they believe in God or think of God, seeing that happen, and asking someone that doesn't, and seeing what happens. And then I would also like to, do you believe that the devil exists or think of the devil? And if the same part lights up and the thing, is that the devil coming in? Is that...
What I believe is going on is that we have what I would call right now, for lack of a better term, telepathy. So all of that is centered in the same part of the brain. So communing telepathically with self or God or Satan would all experientially be the exact same thing.
But you would see it as God touching them, or are them seeing their spirit? Or feeling their spirit, that activity in the brain?
What do you mean touching them?
Whenever they're thinking of God, is that God communicating with them, or is that just a feeling of oneself, that has nothing to do with God?
Electrically, it looks the same as self.
But I'm asking you, is there an actual connection made with God? Because you mentioned telepathy as well.
I think there is. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No. It was just telepathy was mentioned as well. So that's what I'm asking. Is there an actual connection made? Do you believe that there's an actual connection made with God when that is happening?
Go ahead.
That's it. Sorry, it's just the echo.
I have known things outside of learning, seen if they were true in reality, sought them out, and they were physically there. And I mean inanimate objects.
Yeah.
So I'm convinced it's true.
Okay, so that's what I'm asking. Whenever they are doing that and thinking of Satan and it lights up and the same evidence comes back, would that be either direct communication with Satan or at least an opportunity for him to give them information or connect with them?
I think so, yes. I think people do it accidentally and purposefully all the time. All you got to do is put a pretty girl on your arm, go out. You're going to think things you don't want to think, things that'll ruin your life. So either you hate yourself and you want a failed relationship, or you're thinking things that you don't want to think.
Well, I put a pretty girl on my arm and walk outside all the time, but I'm still happy. Love you, girlfriend. Love you.
I'm sure you guys have built trust. I'm sure also if I pressed you on certain situations, you would say you've been in public where there were other men and you've had thoughts like that guy is looking at her, she's looking at him, and set thoughts like that, thoughts that could ruin a relationship if you let it keep going.
I could say, yes, there has been situations. I could pull one that would be, and yeah, we'll not go into details, but yeah, there was a situation like that.
Sure. And it's beautiful.
But that's just, in my opinion,
trusting of you two that you work through that and you don't let it hurt your relationship. That's amazing.
But that's just jealousy. And I would say, as a general...
Sure, there's a label for it.
Yeah. But I wouldn't say that jealousy is directly the devil influencing me. I'd say it's the guy across the bar, that's influencing me because of what he's doing or what's happening or whatever.
Maybe. Sometimes you think someone's looking at your woman or whatever, your significant other, and they're not. They're looking at a TV above their head or some part of the sea, or who knows. Um, every time I've investigated those sort of things, it wasn't true. I just thought something was going on, and it wasn't.
Yeah, yeah. As a reverse of that, I've also been in the opposite situation where I have been out with, if anyone knows from the server, Jack Talon, and there was a lady sitting on her own. She was sitting on her own for about 45 minutes, and I was like, go on over and talk to her. He didn't have the balls to do it, and I was like, it's really easy. You just get up and you do this. And I got up and walked over and sat down and just talked to her, and then come back over again and went over about 2 minutes later and just bought her a drink, asked her if she was all right, because she was sitting there on her own. She'd been nearly there for 45 minutes, as I say, an hour, sitting by herself. And then her boyfriend appeared, and her boyfriend sat down. This is, sorry, after I'd left the second time, because she'd done the boyfriend excuse. So I was like, right, fine, okay, got a boyfriend. And as I say, moved away. He then turned back, and the dirtiest looks in the world I was receiving from him. It did look like he was drunk and going to come over and box me in the mouth and start with the rest of us. And I got up and walked over, introduced myself, and just told him, I was like, no, I'm just here. I have a girlfriend. Do you want to see pictures of my kid? I was like, your woman's sitting here on her own. It's not nice to leave a girl sitting at the bar or sitting alone, And I just went over and introduced myself. I have no shame, no problem with that. But I can get what you're coming from the other side of the other side of the table.
I think these things start hatred and start wars, and that's why we have prejudice and war.
Oh yeah, I have full trust with my woman. I don't look through her phone. She don't look through my phone. There's none of that. We've no need for that sort of thing. I've even, not that it's something simple or anything, but she has 2 fingers on my phone that will open my phone, one in each hand. So even if she loses a hand in an accident and I'm unconscious, she can pick up my phone. And, well, oh, jeez, how's she going to pick it up? She's only got one hand. But she's going to pick up the phone and use her fingerprint, and she can get into the phone. No problem with the trust.
Yeah, we have labels for this like jealousy, ego, pride. We have a lot of labels for it. But I think that we all understand we'd be better off without it. Yet, no society that I'm aware of has gotten rid of it.
Well, I don't think that you can get rid of, I was going to say human nature as a wide brush statement. You can't get rid of jealousy really deep down at the end of it. If you have someone that, as much as we have trust, I could still imagine an instance where I would be jealous of a certain man or this, that, and the other. These things happen, as nice and as good as a guy I am, but you can try and control, possibly, or learn to deal with your emotions probably would be a better way. I don't want to use coping mechanisms and bring messenger reveals into it, but learning to deal with your emotions a wee bit better and not react as quickly. I'm not say shout out to Tony in the chat, let's be a Vulcan, but learn to control your reactions to your emotions more so than get rid of them. But that's how I see it. I don't see it as an influence from either God or an influence from either Satan. I just see it as biology.
Well, I think we're prone to these things. I just have to wonder why there's so much encouragement for it.
Well, I don't think anyone encourages jealousy.
Sure they do.
In what way? Like, if you were in a genuine relationship with someone you trusted, I wouldn't encourage jealousy in either her. She wouldn't do it in me. And I don't think that our friends or family around us would encourage jealousy.
It happens inside of us.
So you encourage it amongst yourself. You can't control
We
that.
encourage it to ourselves.
Well, I would say that if you originally felt...
We give it value.
Well, I would agree with you if you originally felt a small amount of jealousy, you could sit and stew on it and encourage it and make it worse. I would definitely agree with that. But the initial appearance of it, I don't think we've any control over that.
I guess we'll know eventually.
Well, I think due to biology that we would have a pretty good stance leaning towards maybe my evidence, because you would look at even looking at the animal kingdom, when they defend their women. This is mine. The alpha male wants the woman, the women want the alpha male. It's biology, in my opinion.
I'm sure some of it is. I just don't know how much. I mean,
I'm not taking.
certainly, despite my animal, I don't want to be miserable. I don't want to think things that are negative. I don't want to hurt someone else's feelings. But there's times when I think that I'm right and I'll speak or I'll act inappropriately and hurt someone.
Oh yeah, I thought very nasty, nasty, nasty things. You know, I have went that way, but as we've discussed before, I used to have anger problems, and again, it's just biology. I don't think that everybody in my family has a tendency to be more angry than the next. You know, I don't think everyone in my family has a tendency to be more in tune with the devil than everyone else. But there is a line in my family that does get angry. People say it's the ginger hair. I just say it's a lack of tolerance for stupid. But you know, I would go more down the line of we would be biologically prone to that because we inherited from our parents and parents and parents, rather than saying we are more in tune and listen to the devil more often. Because not that I'd say that the devil existed, but if the devil was shouting in one corner and, you know, God was shouting in the other corner, they can shout all they want. I'll still do what I want to do. I'm not really listening to them or influenced by them, if you get what I mean.
Right.
Well, we've ranted on that topic for about 15 minutes. Has anybody in the chat got any questions on that topic that we just went with?
Or even on David and Goliath would be okay.
Yeah. Well, as I say, next week, man, we'll definitely do the Universe Sandbox. If Wednesday, if you're free, if me and you can maybe hang out for an hour on Wednesday.
Set up a time, I'll try to be there.
Yeah, and then we can go through it and get the settings and do all that, because I don't think anybody wants to sit and watch us do that sort of technical stuff. People want to see explosions and planets flying through space. That's what the audience wants to see. They don't want to see us playing with numbers and putting settings in. So we'll definitely,
not the boring part.
Not the boring part. Not the boring part. David didn't kill Goliath. I'll die in this hell. Climb on up. So says Jim Majors. See, Nerdy Rodent's even
David
jumping in.
Not killed Goliath yet.
Nerdy, feel free. I'll send you a link. Send me your email or something. I'll send you a link. You can come in and join and teach us how to use Universe Sandbox. Or you can join the chat and we'll just give you share screen and let you do it. That works too. Right, well, we've done 45 minutes. I appreciate Richard putting up with the echo tonight. Yeah, that's about it. We've got to the end of the story. Next week we'll round it up with an actual visualization, if all goes well. And we learn.
I'm afraid that doesn't really round it up, because there's still other religions that have the same story. I'd like to give at least 2 examples.
Well, if you want to, man, that's 100%. It'll probably take us more than a couple of weeks to get the hang of Universe Sandbox anyway, as
Sure.
Nerdy has pointed out. So yeah, as I've said at the start, I'm willing to go as many episodes as you want to bring this story out and go on as many tangents as possible. So we've got one. Stop hogging Richard, says Wildheart. You have to be out there more, Richard. Share yourself out there more. Spread the love.
Wildheart's welcome to do a show on my channel or have private conversation on Discord or what have you like that.
I think
He's actually
Wildheart's
interested in these things.
I think Wildheart's a secret person and doesn't VC. You'll only ever get them in text. Yeah. I could be wrong, and I would definitely agree with you. I would like to. Can I sit at the window and listen to your conversation so I can hear Wildheart's voice?
I'd have to promise against that, possibly.
No, Richard, no. Cross your fingers and put it behind your back and cross your legs. We'll do all of them things. Right. Well, we're just slobbering now, or more so to the point, I am. So we're going to jump off now, and I'm going to maybe help Richard with his sound. We shall see how that goes. Thank you all for turning up. Really do appreciate, giving us your time, that you could be somewhere else, you could be talking somewhere else, you could be other places. So thank you very much, and as Richard would say, peace and respect from me. Thank you all for coming.
Peace and respect to you all.
Bye-bye.